And welcome to Impact 2026, our continuing conversation where we talk about all different types of topics, race, religion, current events, everything that you can talk about or think about. And this is that place to have that conversation from our point of view. And so, as always, I remind people that you have an opportunity to type your questions and your comments into the comment section so that you can be part of the conversation. Uh, Feel free, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, go ahead and just type it in there and you will be a part of the conversation. We'll bring up your questions or we'll bring up your comments, address them if they're questions, read them if they're comments, and you'll be a part of the conversation. I like to remind the audience about the other offerings that we have here. Uh, on Thursdays at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, on Facebook and YouTube, we have Bible study when we call it Thursday Thirst. And that's our weekly Bible study. That's an opportunity for you to come in and get some further understanding, a deeper knowledge about the Bible. We have to study, you know. And so we also have on Sundays worship service. That's at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's on Facebook, YouTube, and in person at the address on the screen. And then on Tuesdays today, we have from 7 to 7:45 a time of prayer. And so if you're praying in between that time, you're praying with the ministry. You don't have to pray the whole entire time, but anytime between that time, you're praying with the ministry. And of course, you have Impact 2026 where you are right now. Look, last week we talked about the war. We finally broke down and talked about the war. This week, we can't get away from it. We gotta talk about it again. But with a different spin. One of the things that just recently happened, out of all of the craziness that's been going on in with the war in Iran, or the conflict in Iran, whatever you want to call it, between the United States, Israel, and Iran. One of the things that happened was that the president of the United States had to put out had to talk about the budget, about what he wants in the future budget. And it was a moment where he decided that he wanted to address the nation and come up with one of these explanations for what's going on. And he said he wants to grow the size of the military. So right now the military budget is a little bit over $1 trillion, and he wants to double that. Basically, makes it 2.2 trillion. So he wants to just grow the military. So we got the biggest, strongest, best military in the whole entire world. People already claim that we have that, but he wants to spend another $1 trillion in the budget. So the next budget proposal he'll have will have an additional $1 trillion. And so in order to do that, money isn't just everywhere. So we had to cut some other places. And so he explained it. The president explained it very clear and very succinctly. We can't afford to do Medicaid and Medicare. We can't afford to do daycare. Those things will need to be the responsibility of the state and individual people, because we are busy fighting wars. And so that was the comment that came out. So that's where we're going to be kind of today, with the with the thought process and understanding of what's our thought process and what's going on here with that. Now there's people who are going to kind of defend that idea of, we need to cut Medicaid, Medicare, and just so people will know, Medicaid and Medicare. Those are the programs that for people over a certain age and retirement age, that's why they can get their additional. For some people, that's their primary medical care. And for some people, that's a supplemental medical care if they have something built into their former employment. And Medicaid for people who children who don't have insurance, for people who don't have insurance or the resources to have insurance. So people below certain poverty levels or certain economic levels, not poverty level, certain economic levels, they're able to use those programs. And of course, daycare, we all know what that is as well. And so basically, we can't take care of one another. As the wealthiest country in the world, We can't take care of one another because we're too busy trying to kill people. That's basically what the message is. And just for a reference point, we are one of the only major nations here, and when we say major nations, one of the only wealthy nations that doesn't have um, a healthcare system that's basically universal, where everybody can get healthcare. We decided that we wanted to have a healthcare system where you have to pay to play, and if you don't have the money, then you're in trouble. And so we're not going closer to being able to provide healthcare and benefits for everyone. We're going further away because we want to slash that so that we can buy more bombs, so that we can get more tanks and airplanes and drones and all that other craziness. And so that's the thought process. And so we're gonna have people who are gonna try to defend it. Family members, friends, people, associates that get down with that. And I believe, and that's the conversation that's here today. I believe that is a real conversation that needs to be had. That is not one of those flyover conversations. Like if somebody says, "Yeah, I support the president, I support, all these wars, and yeah, we're just going to have to cut back on some other things. We're going to cut back on people's health care. We're going to cut back on daycare for children. We need to cut back on those things so that we can go fight wars and kill people." I don't think that that's a flyover conversation. That is a conversation where you have a responsibility to talk, to intercede, to discuss. We have a responsibility to ask the question. If you are Christian, how does that square with what's going on in the Bible? And we have to think about that with those type of issues. But I think that, as we've talked here numerous times, that's the kind of issue where I think that you have to sit back and you have to have the conversation of, all right, now, what kind of person are you trying to be? Because a lot of us will sit back and we will hear people, family members, friends, like I said, we'll hear people just say things like, "Yeah, I'm okay with the policies of this person, I'm policies of this party, or what's going on. I'm okay with cutting services because those people don't need to be on the services anyway." How does that fit with your faith? And is there a responsibility there that you have to your faith that you're supposed to have, that you can't have that opinion? Or if you even if you think that way, that you have a responsibility towards your faith where you have to be like, "Well, that must be my flesh thinking wrong or crazy." When we look, I think from my perspective, I think when we look at the Bible and we look at what we're being taught here, and we look at what Jesus was doing, Jesus was basically a hospital. He was medicating Medicare, taking care of people in the sense of being able to heal one another. And our responsibility is to take care of one another. And so how are we taking care of one another when we're pulling money and funds away so that we can, again, kill people? When you're putting money towards more military stuff, when you've changed the name, or you've changed the name of what you call it from the Department of Defense, because we're defending ourselves, to the Department of War, and you're saying we're too busy fighting wars, then it is very clear that you want to go kill people. And so we want to spend our money, our taxpayer money and our funds on killing people instead of keeping people alive through the medical, Medicaid and Medicare, through keeping people, having better lives, keeping them with the ability to pay for Medicaid, different medical situations. Because Medicare and Medicaid, it's when we're talking medical, we're not just talking about going to the hospital. It's a lot of things built in there. And so we're going to cut back on our social programming, on our social programs. Sorry. So again, so that we can kill people in other countries. And so it's actually a double shot. You're killing people in other countries, and you actually you're probably killing people here by reducing the amount of opportunity that they have to go and get well. And then of course, you don't care anything about the children. So I think that's one of those. That's a responsibility that we have to talk to. We can't let that slide by. You don't let people just say, "All right, that's cool," and then you just let that one slide. I guess if we're at work, maybe because you don't want to talk political government stuff at work. But when we're with our family and friends, I think it's a responsibility that we talk towards that. Now, that being said, I think we got to talk correctly. And what I believe is we have a responsibility to take care of one another. Even if you don't want taxes to grow and you're like, oh man, all these entitlement programs are getting too big. Well, we're not talking about that. We're talking about taking more money and sending it to weapons and being able to harm folks. So we're not talking about reducing the budget. We're not talking about, oh no, this is too much. No, we're talking about we still want to have a bunch of money, but we just want to move it away from things that'll help folks so we can produce more things that will harm folks. And so that's, regardless of if you are liberal, conservative, if you are, I want to make sure that we have a tight budget and I'm anti-tax, regardless of what you are. The fundamental issue with this is, if you're going to have money, should it go towards helping people or hurting people? And so right now we're a country of hurting people. And I think the shame of it is, it's not just the as some people say, it's not just the crazy man in the White House. It's the people that try to defend that. And there's a lot of people who are just going to try to defend it. They're going to be like, oh well, so making all these excuses. And I think we got to hold each other accountable. We got to continuously talk about these things and not let them slide. I think trying to think of how the saying goes, but basically, silence is one of the things that evil uses or bad uses, is silence. And so the more we are silent, the more we don't push back, the more we don't talk about things, the more we let stuff go and we don't talk towards it or say anything about it. That's the more that we have these, the more these bad situations are going to occur. And so we have these thought processes, because again, the president is not the only one. We have these thought processes that we need to take away services from one another, so that we can put them towards violence. It's like the same thing as we're taking away education programs so that we can build more jails, or let's take away let's take away anything that helps people so that we can do hurting people. Let's take away the community organizations and let's get more police officers. Even though police officers help the community, we need a lot more community organizations and things to help people on the front end than to try to hurt people on the back end. And so as community, as people who are supposed to be taking care of one another, we have to be looking more towards that side. And unfortunately, that's not where a lot of people are right now. And we have to make sure that we encourage people to get there, encourage people to want to love one another. You can't be loving one another when you're trying to kill one another. And that's not the route that we're supposed to be. A comment. It is suggested that states should take care of Medicare, Medicaid, and children. The problem with that thinking is that all states are not equal. For example, West Virginia. If there is a plan to increase the military forces and capabilities, then there must be a plan to use them. The president, over the months, have been threatening other nations. He wants wars so money can be made and people's attention is diverted. Yeah, there's a lot there. Yes, he definitely wants war so he can make money and to get people's attention away from the stuff that's going on. He has a lot of bad things that are going on, and so he wants to get people's attention away from it. Yeah. Going back to the suggestion of the states doing Medicare and Medicaid and children, that's basically meaning we want to cut it, because he's not saying we're going to reduce the size of federal government so that the states can keep more of their money, or individuals can keep more of their money so that they can take care of Medicaid and Medicare and children. He's saying we're going to keep all the same money. Matter of fact, we're increasing our budget at the federal level, and the states just need to figure it out. So subsequently saying we're making a major cut to all of these programs because most of these programs are federally funded. And so if the states can take it over, where the money gonna come from? Where we're going to double tax people and triple tax people. We're going to tax them even more. And then also, you're right, the states. The irony is the poor states, the states that don't, there are states that put into the government, the federal government, and there are states that always take. The poor states are the ones who will be hurt the most by this. And most of those are states that voted for Donald Trump. That's the irony and the crazy part of it. But yeah, that's not a real without federal funding, these programs don't work, and they can't last. And so yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, why should we? Okay, why should we all pay for the military and a military upgrade? Won't you leave that up to the states? We don't have to go out here as a country and fight wars. Each state can come up with whatever they want militarily, and we can grab a little bit from here, similar to the National Guards that we have, or the reservists and the different different groups we have at the states. If you want to make the states have to pay for all the things that benefit the citizens, then let's also do the same thing when it comes to the military, when it comes to the wars, when it comes to the fighting. Let's do it the same way. And we want to do that. And so I think that's the problem. And sometimes they trick people because it's funny. People always want to talk about states' rights this and states' rights that. When it comes to helping people and helping one another. But when it's stuff that's bad, again, like trying to fight wars, that's going to be on the federal level. So that means everyone has to put in their taxes for that. Everyone has to pay for that. That's going to be on equal footing. But when it comes to taking care of people, let's do it at the state level. And some states will be able to take care of people well, and some won't be able to. That's not great. That's a bad. I think that's a bad situation. I think we should have levels of which what we will accept as a society. And as I said, most major countries, they provide medical services, universal health care. So healthcare is provided for pretty much all people. Education as well, higher level of education usually provided. It's very, very cheap in other countries. And you see that there's an exodus of people who have decided to go to other countries to kind of test out their different systems. And they're saying that, as great as the United States is, as they say, or as great as democracy is that we have here, in some of these other countries, you look at their government and their systems and their way of providing services for one another. And it may be, a lot of them say they like it better. And we're talking about countries, European countries. We're talking about countries in Asia. We're talking about countries in South America, countries all over the place. Countries in Africa. They're providing for their people better. And so why are we not doing that here? Selfishness, greed, whatever you want to call it, we're falling into that situation. And so, yeah, as this war rages on, we can't get confused about what's going on. Is it, as was said in the statement, a distraction so that money can be moved around? Because at the end of the day, we fought with Venezuela, fighting with Iran, and now these are supposed to justify the fact that we want to move money away from people, helping people, or away from medical care, away from child care, so that we can move it towards wars. And so it's all a distraction to put us towards that. That's possibly what it could be. It's what it looks like to me. And so, again, as our discussion point, that's what we need to do. We have to talk that through. Can't let those thought processes going through just fester on their own. I hear from time to time, I hear a lot of people who are talking about, what's going on in the world. And they just don't have an opportunity to hear the other sides and other opinions. Or they don't often hear pushback because people don't like to push back sometimes. But as Christians, I think there's a Christian aspect to it. if you want to call yourself Christian, if you want to call yourself a churchgoer, at the end of the day, when we have these conversations and we talk this stuff through, we need to be able to look back and say, hey, what did Jesus do? What would Jesus do? Give me an example in the Bible. Show me something there. And if we kind of stay there, I think we're going to do a little bit better off in these conversations. But I think a lot of times we don't talk like that. I've been in a lot of conversations. I don't hear people talk like that. And I think that's our responsibility to talk a little bit more like that. For leaders to claim to be Christians, they seem to forget Matthew 25:35. For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. Yeah, that's our responsibility. People like to do little tricks with that and say, well, I can do that on a personal level. We don't need to do that as the government. I can do that on a personal level. The problem with that, that kind of thought process is you're not trying to do that on a personal level. You can do that on a personal level now. What you're trying to do is take away what's already being provided. And so for all the people who are getting stuff that are not near you and not in your reach and where you can't touch them right now, you want to take away from all of those folk so that you can give away a little bit on your personal level. And so, as Christians, we got to remember what the word says. And I think those are the conversations. And that's what we got to remind people. When people come back and say, nah, we shouldn't be providing this and that for these people and that folk. What does the word say? And as it says right here, I think it's a great comment in Matthew 25. It doesn't say, for I was hungry and I was fully employed, but just was on hard times. It doesn't say I was hungry and I was able to show my green card because I have reason to be here in this country, or I'm a legal citizen or whatever. All of these extra qualifiers that we put on, it's not here, which means we shouldn't be putting on all these qualifiers. If people are hungry, we need to feed them. If people, are thirsty, we need to give them some drink. If people are in need, medical attention, whatever we need to be providing for one another. And there should not be any qualifiers to it. And I think that's where we've fallen off. And even in the church, because I've heard people say, and I know everyone has, you've heard people say, well, we're just supposed to take care of one another. Take care of other Christians or take care of other people in the church. And again, that qualifier doesn't say that. Doesn't say that anywhere. People search hard and long to find little verses to try to justify, well, no, when Paul was talking, he was only talking about us taking care of other Christians. It really don't say that. And you got to really search hard to find that. We're supposed to treat everyone, all children of God, and that's everyone. We treat them as brothers and sisters. Brothers and sisters in Christ, we can treat as brothers and sisters in Christ, but brothers and sisters who we don't know whether or not they're in Christ, they're still brothers and sisters, and we have to treat them and feed them and do, treat them well. The Matthew scripture in verse 32 says that Christ will come and all the nations will be gathered before him. Sounds like not just individuals will be judged, but nations will be judged. Yeah. And if nations are going to be judged, we are in trouble. Because the United States is in a bad spot right now. When I can tell you one thing, out of all the things, we are not representing any kind of, not only Christian faith, we're not representing any kind of faith right now. We are really bad when it comes to morals and what we're doing as far as taking care of others. All right. So with that being said, look, I'll give my opinion on this. I do think the war, the conflict with Iran is purely a money grab. I think that's all it is. It's all it's ever been. It's all been about money. Whether you think it's about us the United States trying to get oil, whether you think it's like I think it's more so about the president and his people manipulating the stock market. Because as a business person, I think that's where it is. Whether it is trying to raise the gas prices here so that the people who pump gas here in Texas and Oklahoma can do well. and make a bunch of money. Uh, Whatever it is, I think it's just purely connected to money, and it has nothing to do with anything other than that, except for one thing, which is Israel, wanting to get back at their enemies. Um, that's less about money, but there's some way that that's probably connected to money as well. But I think all of this is a money grab, and I think that our responsibility as people is not to get caught up in that money grab. Um, you know, at the end of the day, I don't know a lot about Iran and the Iranian people. Uh, I know that a lot of people, citizens there, had problems with their government. Um, I know that the government, it's said that the government has killed a lot of people, protesters and people who are anti the regime, people who don't want to follow how the rules that they have set up there. They have very strict rules, and they say it's oppressive, and some people don't want to be a part of that. I'm not really sure on that. But what I am sure on is going across and just murdering people is not the way. Um, you're fighting leaders, you're killing civilians, you're killing everybody else. Not the way. Not the way. And so that's going to continue to be the way if our country decides that yes, we want to, make the military even bigger and cut services for people here in our country, cut medical services and cut child care services and whatever other services that they're talking about, because they just basically wants to do a clean cut of all of the social, uh, the social things that we fund right now on the federal level. And so that's a lot more than just Medicaid and Medicare are the biggest ones, but you also got to look at Social Security. We got to look at some other stuff. They're trying to cut, and so yeah, and don't think that all right, we're gonna cut from people, but don't worry, everybody who's associated with the military is gonna be doing good. If you think that the United States treats the military well, you got another thing coming. You look at the VA, Veterans Affairs. You look at how people are treated. You look at some of the things that they're doing with the barracks and situations like that. You talk to some folk who have been in the military. Some of them they all right. They do pretty good, but a lot of them, it's a lot more to be wanted. It's a lot more. It's a lot better that we should be able to do, and a lot better that we should be doing for them. So this is not a situation where you think, oh, it's going to be all good because we military, we're just trying to put more money towards them so that we can take care of all those people who are going to put their lives on the line. That's not the case. All right. Well, all right. I know that was military stuff, but or war stuff or whatever we want to call it. Hopefully, we can get back to a little bit rosier topics and other things to discuss. But I think it's as I've said many times before, it's our responsibility to speak up. And so when you hear people who support this kind of craziness, it's our responsibility to speak up and have these conversations. The U.S. claims to be the greatest nation. However, there are many nations who provide much more to their people than the U.S. The U.S. may be the best at having the biggest military. It may be the greatest at incarceration. Yeah. And again, that's why a lot of people, you hear about folk all the time, the ones that have money and that have means, looking at some other countries and saying that, this isn't the only game in town. Yeah, this country does give you a lot of opportunity to make a lot of money. You have a lot of opportunity to make businesses and do other things. You can be a YouTube star, you play sports, you can work yourself to death by working like 40, 60, 80 hours a week. There's a lot of opportunity here. But there's also a lot of problems here because we don't really care about others the way that some others do. And so, yeah, a lot of people have been going to other countries. A lot of people have been looking at other situations. A lot of people have been trying to change what we have going on here because, yeah, the U.S. claims to be the greatest nation. But we have a lot of problems, and there's a lot of greed and a lot of hate. And so when you got open opportunity, you do run into a lot of greed, a lot of selfishness. And I haven't been to a bunch of other countries, just a couple, just a handful. Um, But I'll say this: I truly believe that this is the greediest country. This is the most narcissistic country, because of how our society runs, and it's not great. The opportunity to make money is not for everyone. Oh yeah, that's true. That's only for and it's only the game is only for a couple. Um, a lot of people come from other countries over here. You got an opportunity. You can do whatever you want. You can do a little bit of what you want, but the real opportunity is only for a handful. Yeah, that's a really good statement because that's yeah, the opportunity is not for everybody. To make money is not for everyone. All right. That being said, I want to remind people again about our offerings on Thursday, 7 o'clock, right here, Eastern Standard Time. 10 o'clock, Sunday, worship. It's 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, Facebook, YouTube, and in person. And on Tuesdays at 7 to 7:45, we have a time of prayer. That is a time when everyone in the ministry is praying. Please pray with us. The world needs to be prayed for. There's a lot of things that we need to pray for, and there is power in prayer, and there's power in us praying together. So please join us for that, because I don't want people just to slide by that one like, oh yeah, they got Bible study and they got worship. No, we got prayer as well. All right, and of course, with that being said, we have Impact 2026 here at 8 o'clock on Tuesdays. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the comments, and please feel free to come again.